Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Cube Tuesdays. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the initiative. How good is it in Cube? Spoiler, it's very good. How to include it in your own cube and what you should consider when you're actually adding it in. So the initiative has been around for about a year or so now. I do think people, including myself, were a bit slow on the uptake in terms of how strong these cards actually are. But the cat is very much out of the bag now, and it's probably been that way for about 6 months. Cards have been banned in multiple formats because people have realised how strong these actually are in one-on-one. Firstly, we had a bunch banned in Pauper, and then most recently we had one banned in Legacy, just to really show how strong these cards actually are. So I think the best place to start is, what does the initiative actually do? We'll kind of go from the ground up, working our way to how good they are. So the initiative, like the Monarch, is a made-for-multiplayer mechanic that adds additional value to the game. And like the Monarchy, it highlights that mechanics made for multiplayer are very broken one-on-one. Importantly, the game does not start with initiative active. A card has to come in to introduce it to the game. So if you cast a card like Avenging Hunter, it says you take the initiative. This is introducing the initiative to a game. The initiative takes you through a particular dungeon, specifically the Undercity. Now this is much stronger than any other dungeon that we have seen up to this point, again because it is made for multiplayer. The first time you take the initiative, you move into the first room of the dungeon. So effectively every card that reads you take the initiative also has the first room of the dungeon, which is you search your library for a basic land and put it into your hand. If you have the initiative at the beginning of your upkeep, you venture or move one more space into the dungeon. Also, like the Monarchy, if someone deals combat damage to you, they take the initiative and they start their own journey into that particular dungeon. When that happens, it does mean it is moving at the point of combat damage, so it can move in the middle of a turn. That can be at the regular combat step, or if a card has first strike and it deals combat damage to someone with the initiative, you take it in the first strike damage phase, so then the effect happens before regular damage. So I guess the next question is, why is this good? Well, basically, every mode, every room in the Undercity, in this particular dungeon, is worth a card by itself. The one room that isn't great is the Go Target Creature. That is not what you want to be doing one-on-one. Generally, you pick a side you want to go down. More aggressive decks will generally go down the left-hand side, so they get the basic land. They put 2+1 counters onto a creature. They make a player lose 5 life, which is huge, and I have seen end games, and then you draw a card. Then finally, you have like the ultimate, as it were, where you look at the top 10 cards of your library and put a creature into play with 3+1/+1 counters on them. It has hexproof until your next turn. This effectively is a Planeswalker's ultimate. You are digging 10 cards deep, taking the best creature from there and bringing it into play with 3 counters on it. You don't have to pay mana for it, it comes straight into play. That is very, very good. Slower decks will tend to go down the right-hand side more, so they'll scry 2 after they've got their land, they'll make a treasure token, and then they'll make a 4/1 menace, and then do the ultimate thing. Every room in that dungeon that we have mentioned is a card's worth of value, and all you have had to do to get all those different things, because remember it moves at the beginning of your upkeep if you don't do anything, is play this one creature. So one initiative creature can lead to all of that value. It's really, really good. When the initiative is in play, a lot of the games, kind of similarly to the Monarchy, become about getting hold and keeping the initiative. And also, as you are the deck that has introduced initiative, generally speaking, you are in a better position because your room will trigger first. Even if you're just trading it off back and forth, you will be one room ahead of your opponent, so you'll get to that lovely ultimate all the quicker. The thing that makes this stronger than the Monarchy, in my opinion, is that this works better in multiples. If you have the Monarchy and you play a card that makes you the Monarch, it doesn't really do anything, you already have that. If you have the initiative and you play a creature that takes the initiative for you, you move an extra level into the dungeon, so you're getting that card's worth of value all the quicker. Likewise, if you flicker these initiative creatures, if you flicker a creature that says you take the initiative, when it comes back into play, you move another step into the dungeon, triggering that room's ability, getting that extra card's worth of value. It's very, very strong. So in terms of actually adding the initiative to a cube environment, what are the things you have to consider? Well, firstly, if my counting on Scryfall is correct, we currently have 23 spells that bring the initiative into play. We have 16 creatures, 3 artifacts, 2 enchantments, and 2 sorceries. By God, you do not want to run all of them. That would be insane. I'm going to tier them out in terms of the ones that I have run and I know are good. This is for an unrestricted cube. We will touch on Peasant and Pauper a little bit later on. In terms of top tier, I think White Plume Adventurer is probably the best. I actually can't think of a white 3-drop creature I would pick over White Plume Adventurer. It is honestly that good. It brings in the initiative, it's a 3/3 body for 3 mana. That is really good, and its ability basically gives a creature you control vigilance. If you ultimate a dungeon, it then gives all your creatures vigilance. That is really, really strong. Next up, I would put Seasoned Dungeoneer as the next one here. Again, this is so strong, I can't think of a white 4-drop like genuinely can't think of a white 4-drop I would want to play over Seasoned Dungeoneer. Like, I generally think this card is better than Hero of Bladehold and Gideon Ally of Zendikar. That is how highly I am rating this. It alone gets super big by that Explore trigger, and the fact that it can give itself protection from creatures means that when it attacks, it is always going to be taking the initiative back. That is truly fantastic. Like, the 2 white ones are phenomenal. They're some of the best cards in any kind of white X beatdown deck. The white ones are also very solid in mid-range and control because it just gives you that inevitability. If your opponent can't get any damage through to you, maybe because you're answering their threats, or you've played some walls, or you just have ways of defending yourself, you're just going to slowly tick through the dungeon, you're going to scry some cards, you're going to make a 4-1 with Menace that you can then start swinging through for them for damage, and then you're going to get your big win condition out of the deck because you're digging 10 cards deep and it's coming into play, and your opponent won't be able to deal with it. Next down, we have Caves of Chaos Adventurer and Under Mountain Adventurer. The red one is a fine red beater with trample that comes with a bit of card advantage. The red one I don't think is as good in an aggressive deck. Like, I don't think in mono red aggro it is as strong as Hellrider or Torbrand, although there is definitely a conversation there. But any kind of red X mid-range deck, it will love this card. It's really, really good. The green one, you'll likely be able to ramp out as you're in green, and a 3/4 Vigilance Body is a fine way of attacking and also keeping the initiative. The green one as well, I think just goes in any green X deck. All these are super splashable to cast as well. There's no double pips in here. But any kind of Gruul beatdown deck, these both are fantastic in there. Next up, this is for cubes specifically, but I would put Savaric's Tomb next. Basically because a lot of cubes want to run a big artifact mana rock anyway. Remember that this does get you a land when it comes into play, so if you haven't got your 5th land drop, this can get you that. That's basically giving you the 3 mana that a Thran Dynamo would do. It's a bit loose, but I think in cube this slots in easier than the other ones. These are the 5 cards that I am currently running in my 540. Personally, I wouldn't really want to go any higher than this. I found all these cards to be exceptionally good, but my worry is that if there was more than this, then the whole cube becomes about getting the initiative. It becomes like an initiative cube at that point. Because as well as I mentioned, these get better in multiples. If you play your 3-drop White Plume Adventurer into your 4-drop Seasoned Dungeoneer, you will go through the dungeon that extra step quicker. And that is where the game gets out of hand, and it's very, very stupid. In terms of like the next tier down in terms of cube viability, I would go for, oh, how do you pronounce this? Aracocra Sneak. It's a solid card. It has flying, which is the important part, so it's very good at getting you the initiative back if you ever lose it. I'd put Ravencloth Adventurer next. The nerfing cards going to your opponent's graveyards is quite solid. We do like that. And then, if I'm honest, I like Vicious Battle Rager next. If it attacks, you either get the initiative back or you dome them for 5. That's quite solid in any kind of black aggro type of build. That's how I'd rank them for kind of unrestricted cube. If we're moving on to Peasant, I'd run the Arocra Sneak, Bloodboil Sorcerer, Avenging Hunter, Vicious Battle Rager, and Underdark Explorer. And then for Pauper, it would be the same list, but without the Bloodboil Sorcerer. Although do remember, if you're putting these in the Pauper cube, most of these were banned for being too strong in that format, so there is a high chance you might need to check out the variance and the power level of your cube when doing that, as they could generally warp the whole environment around. Same, if I'm honest, with budget cubes. I do think these could be too good if you don't have the answers for them, or if you don't have some other evasive threats in terms of kind of getting it back. The only really expensive one currently is Seasoned Dungeoneer. That's because at time of recording it's not banned in Legacy. Who knows if that will change. But I would assume White Plume Adventurer, which I do think is the best one, will come down in price now there isn't a format that wants to be running 4 of them. I think next let's move on to how have they played in my cube and how strong in general do I think they are. So I've had the 4 creatures that I mentioned in my cube for about 4 months now, with the Artifact Tome only coming in recently. Now they have been extremely strong. For context, again, my cube is as powerful as you can make it without running fast mana. So there's no Soul Ring or Moxen, but there is things like Kiki Jiki combo, Thassa's Oracle, there's Shieldred and Wheels in there. So it's pretty high up there in terms of power level. In my cube, we have generally found that unless they're coming up against a super strong combo deck, a full-on initiative deck with like 3 or 4 initiative creatures will be one of the strongest things in the draft. As I mentioned, chaining them together is very, very scary, or if you can get multiple value off of them with like some flicker spells, it gets very, very strong. Like ephemerating one of these puts you so many steps through the dungeon, it's dumb. So with all that, it did mean for a while the strongest deck in my cube was like kind of like a Naya mid-rangey type of thing, playing some mana dorks, playing some interaction, and then playing initiative cards along with some other big beaters as your kind of top end. I've definitely noticed, as these have been in for longer, that people have noticed how good they are, and they are starting to take them higher. That means the most people are having in a deck is normally like 2 initiative creatures, which I think is a fine place to be. Literally the last cube I do think was won by someone running 2 initiative creatures. But that is not all the time. It is showing that it puts up numbers and it is strong, but it's not an auto win. That's a nice level for me at the moment. If I ran more initiative stuff, like if I went into the black creatures or the blue creature, I would worry that this would just become too strong an archetype. That's why at 540, I would recommend not going above 5. I personally won't ever go above that. I think in a 360 cube, you could probably get away between 3 and 4. And then at 720, probably between 5 and 6, just because the power drop-off is noticeable between kind of the top tier ones and the next ones down. Cool, so I think we're going to draw a line under it there. Do let me know down in the comments what your experience with Initiative is. I would like to hear how other people have found it. Has it been as broken in other people's experience as I've seen it in mine? That would be good to hear. But until next time, please like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.